and welcome back to another episode of the Relay Movie Edition. We're finally doing it a lot more consistent already. This is probably broke a record for quickest back-to-back episodes we posted, but that's a good sign because we're on the right footing. So you probably, like I said, in the title, we're going to be doing BlacKkKlansman today. But before we get to that, I want your input on some news in the world today. 6ix9ine came out with a song. How'd you feel about that?
Trash. Like, it's not anything different. I don't expect anything more from him at all.
It's like he made it before he went to jail and then just released it right when he got out.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if he actually I was not paying attention to the lyrics at all. So if he name drops anyone, then that's very possible. I know he just got off Instagram Live like a couple hours ago and he was calling everyone out. So that's a big deal, I guess. But
yeah, and he was talking about killing people in the song and stuff like that. So hey, it's his life. He chose not to do witness protection, so he can do whatever he wants to do. But I mean, that was probably the biggest news in the last couple months. So we could just get into the movie because not much is going on right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so BlacKkKlansman, as we said before, it's a 2018 movie, comedy crime film directed by Spike Lee and written by Charlie Watchtel. I don't want to butcher the name, but something like Watchtel, something like that. David Robino. What?
Just power through it. It doesn't matter.
Kevin Wilmot. And then Spike Lee, of course, on that as well. So if you haven't seen the movie, I mean, you should probably pause this and go watch it. Or if you can't, this is a little summary. An African-American police officer from Colorado Springs successfully manages to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan branch with the help of a Jewish surrogate who eventually becomes its leader, and it's based on actual events. So I watched this movie last night. I know you watched. Did you watch it? Did you rewatch it, or do you just?
Yeah, no, I rewatched it yesterday. Yeah.
So I know that was probably your second time watching it.
It was like my third.
Okay, your third time. So how about you? You get going at it then.
Well, there's a lot of things that I love about this movie. First of all, Denzel Washington's son plays the lead. And
I didn't even take that in.
So Spike Lee has obviously worked with Denzel Washington in a bunch of movies like Malcolm X, He Got Game, and I think Inside Man is another one. So to see John David Washington work with Spike Lee is just already a great sign. I thought he was phenomenal in this movie. There's so many instances where you watch and you're like, holy shit, this is like Denzel Washington. Like, it's crazy. Like, I want to see a lot more of him for sure.
Well, I was going to say I'm excited because he's going to be in the new Christopher Nolan movie Tenet.
Yeah.
And that was I think it was already supposed to be out, or it was supposed to be out soon. I'm not exactly sure, but it got pushed because of COVID, which is too bad. But like, I don't know anything about it, but the trailers got me interested. It looks cool. And it's Christopher Nolan, so you can't really do anything wrong with him.
And like you were mentioning, it's based on a true story. So the message of the story itself aligns with a lot of the issues that are going on in today's world, which was why it was probably such widely received. It does a great job of balancing entertainment while also conveying an important message. The fact that they're able to tell this like very true and yet horrifying story while also having like a lot of great instances of humor, I think was phenomenal the way it was done. And not only that, it attracts like a much more mainstream audience that way, because people, when they like, if he were to advertise this movie in a much darker way, it may not have attracted as many people. But yeah, that's
exactly what I was going to say. It's like, there are movies where they take kind of more a dark approach, and that's great. Like a movie like, I don't know, like 12 Years a Slave or something like that, where you're just not really going to get that much comedic relief. It's great, and it's still like just as important. But for some people, like watching a movie where it's just dark 24/7, you kind of need those instances of relief where they're still handled properly and not like misjudged and doesn't come off like just blatantly offensive. It doesn't have a use for it. All the humor in this movie was very useful. And I love how they used kind of like humor just to like expose the stupidity of like the KKK members in this movie pretty much. Like even right off the bat with Alec Baldwin's character, who's just like clearly just spewing like crap and propaganda, but then throughout it he's just like making random noises, clearing his throat, or like he has to go for lines off script, just stuff like that. Or even when Felix, who's like the guy that's interrogating Adam Driver's character, when he thinks when he means circumcised, but he says circumstance. Or even just like the character Ivanhoe, who is probably one of my favorite characters. He's just like the guy that's just always is hammered and looks like he's tired and sloppy. And it's just like characters that, because they're not so dark, like you still get the point across using humor, because it exposes their stupidity without mishandling it for it being like it's not like funny just for the point of being entertaining. It's just like you said, it's more mainstream because you kind of need that relief. Because if it's just like horrible thing after horrible thing, you're like, okay, I get the point. Like I understand how important it is, but like getting through this movie is going to be tough. But that kind of gives you like a breather and allows you to go on to the next parts where it gets darker again. It just like gives you breaks, but it also works well in the story, which is really important.
And I'll get on to what you were talking about a little bit later about the stupidity of the KKK members, but I just wanted to say the soundtrack of this movie I thought was one of the highlights of it for sure. It didn't win because
we'll get into that later too.
Black Panther, but I thought it drove the mood so well, and of course, just from the time, there's so many good songs to choose from. Adam Driver, of course, was great in this film. He's also known for being in these type of movies where it balances like the light and the dark very well, like you see in Star Wars and stuff like that. So that's very good. And the acting of all the KKK members I thought was really good as well, because you can't tell me that it's easy to sit in a room and cheer on a movie that has like a lot of horrible stuff going on in it, and
all the horrible stuff they have to say.
Yeah, and to embody that whole persona is definitely not easy as an actor. So kudos to them for sure. Yeah, I have some stuff about the dislikes, but I'll let you rebuttal.
Yeah, I have some stuff too. But yeah, and the stupidity, it kind of reminded me of Django Unchained as well. You know, the scene where like the KKK members and like they haven't like cut the holes in their masks so they can't see, and just funny things like that. I think it's just a cool way of showing how stupid they are, and like their stupidity kind of stabs them in the back in the end when they end up technically like blowing themselves up through Felix's wife, which I thought was a perfect ending. And what I really liked about this movie is that after like reading up about it, I realized like a lot of it was like very accurate. About like I think 2/3 of the film they said was accurate. Just the whole ending, like that whole blowing up in the car was based on another situation that actually did happen, but like not in that specific case. But pretty much everything about it was true. Like he actually started talking to David Duke, like the Grand Wizard, and like, so basically, it wasn't just Stallworth on the phone. Chuck, who was the real guy that played Adam Driver's character, apparently he would talk on the phone sometimes as well. But the one thing I would think is like, how would they not, especially in real life, because I know it's a movie, but how would they not realize the difference in voice, especially if you're, I guess they also said they weren't meeting as much as they were saying in person. So I guess you don't have that many instances where you're talking to the person in real life. But like, especially in the movie, Adam Driver's voice is so deep compared to John David Washington's. So that was the only thing where I was like, one of the only things where I was like, how would he get around that? And they did mention it, but that was whatever. But apparently he really did take a photo with David Duke at that banquet or whatever that celebration was. So I tried to look up the photo, but I couldn't find it. But that was a funny scene as well. But yeah, pretty much all of it was based on a true story. And they talked about how there was like high-ranking U.S. military officials. And actually, because of that case, like 4 members of the U.S. military had to resign.
So, like, a lot of the stuff was true, but it did get criticized a bit about some factually incorrect stuff. And, like, I don't have all the facts in front of me, but one thing that I disliked about this is there's a lot of instances in the second half of the film where I think they're trying a little too hard to make the KKK look very like and feel very cartoonish, like just over the top stupid, where it's like when Ron Stallworth first talks to David Duke, at least he like attempts to rationalize his viewpoint where I'm pretty sure he he says that he actually does not hate black people, but he hates the fact that they're integrating with white people, right? Which is
They do
still
their own
as
thing, we do
ignorant,
our own thing. Yeah.
which is still just as ignorant and stupid. But towards the end, it was just kind of like good versus evil, where, yeah, I don't know. That was just one thing. But, and you're talking about Ivan, I think it's just like his whole character, I think, exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about, where they're just trying to push the narrative that everyone in the KKK is just stupid. Where it's like, I don't think that it's necessarily fair to just go over the top and categorize every single person as that. Obviously, they're ignorant, and a lot of their viewpoints are ignorant and very stupid. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it does get balanced out with who's the main guy that gives his.
Yeah.
I think that gets balanced out because he's actually like I forget the actor's name, but he's in like New Amsterdam and he's in some other shows that my parents watched. But I thought he was excellent in it. I thought he kind of balanced it out nicely where he was probably the most likable KKK member. He was pretty rational about things, like compared to Felix or Ivanhoe, who is just like really stupid. And then there's like the extreme KKK member. He kind of seemed like, although obviously he's still like a whack job for his beliefs, like he was kind of the more rational, like well-spoken of them. So I was glad to see that as well, because like it can't all be silly. There has to be, and also because if it's completely silly all the time, sometimes you're taking away from actually how serious it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things when I was watching this movie is like, it's all horrible while you're watching the movie and all this stuff and like what actually happened. But sometimes maybe the humor can take a layer of that away. But then I think the ending scene where you see like the actual footage of Charlottesville also just wraps it up perfectly, where it's like you did get all that, but still at the end, because obviously the ending of the movie is always the most impactful. So you're left off on that note, which is extremely serious and like just like heart-wrenching, those videos. So you kind of get like, you're watching the movie, but it's much more than a movie.
Yeah, and that's, like I was saying, it's one of the many instances where like it kind of transcends two completely different generations, right? Like the story itself, and it's crazy that it's true, the whole story of Ron Stallworth, but the fact that
it sounds like a movie.
Yeah, the way that Spike Lee was able to kind of connect the two generations itself, I thought was amazing. But in that same light, there were a lot of instances where I think he tried to direct, like, and I would be fine if it was more subtle, but like with the videos of Donald Trump at the end, I think he tried a little too hard to directly correlate David Duke with Donald Trump. And of course, everyone knows Donald Trump is just as ignorant as a lot of the people in this film with a lot of the things, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to directly correlate the two, because there was even like a scene where David Duke was like, "Oh, we need to take back and make America great," or something. He said something very similar to Donald Trump's slogan, which I thought was clever, but it's just like he's very open about what he's trying to do here.
And I think that for him was very purposeful, because I think he's very strong on how, like, his beliefs. And obviously every movie you watch is going to have its own sort of bias. Like if you watch Michael Moore's like Bowling for Columbine or any of those movies, they're all going to have their own twist that's kind of like pushed, or like Fahrenheit 9/11, they're all going to be pushed kind of in his direction. And so Spike Lee's obviously going to do the same thing. I think he's just kind of like trying to make people realize, I don't know if he's saying, I think because when you think of David Duke, like, although he's a horrible person, all this stuff, and like most people in some, like, don't really come in contact with him. Like, although he's like a horrible person, he does all, and he promotes this horrible stuff. Like, I guess they don't realize, like, they don't think he has that much power. He's not that relevant to their lives. They're like, I don't care what he says. I'll never believe him. But then when he brings up like Donald Trump, somebody that's actually like running the country, he's trying to make people put in their mind that, like, in his beliefs, somebody that's running the country is this is still going on. He's trying to make it very relevant in people's lives, because this is a movie that's set in the 70s, and everybody knows the trials and tribulations Black people went and still go on to this day. But I think he's trying to make it people realize, like, this isn't over yet. This is still going on.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that about how, like, while I think the direct correlation is unfair, there are still many traits that you could see are like, hey, David Duke, obviously, he is on a much lower scale than the president of the United States, but the fact that there are any connections to those two
Yeah.
people is just like scary as hell, right?
Like just
So
seeing the footage of people like marching through the streets, it makes you just want to punch one of them in the face. Like
yeah,
it's so frustrating. But yeah,
great movie, great
yeah.
movie.
So why don't you go on your rating and kind of why you give it the rating you give it?
So my final rating. Okay, so I'm giving it a 9.2. So this is one up from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If I was thinking about it, if I were to go back, I would probably rate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 9 because I want to give these two movies a decent amount of separation.
And that's the problem when you like,
Because
yeah, you rate movies when you start comparing them. Like, oh, I like this one actually a lot
yeah,
more than I rank that one.
um, but I think this deserves a higher rating for a number of reasons because of its accessibility. The fact that you can go into this movie not knowing anything and still come out of it loving it. Whereas I think with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you need to know the backstory of Sharon Tate, or else it's not going to do it nearly as much for you. And you need to know Quentin Tarantino as a director and why this movie would mean so much to him. But yeah, BlacKkKlansman, one of my favorite movies. 9.2.
And what I like about it is that like the social commentary, like some movies, there's social commentary where it's a lot more like kind of hidden and deceived. This, it's like the social commentary is very clear, but it's also just very easy to understand. And it's not like it's maybe some of it's forcing in your face, but it's all like most of it makes sense. Like it's
Yeah.
all in place and you understand why it's happening and that it's true. Yeah. So I'd give this movie, I'd probably give it a 9.1. I enjoyed it all the way throughout. I liked the humor in it. I thought it was well handled. The only reason maybe I wouldn't give it higher, and this isn't even the movie's fault, is that like if I was gonna give it say like a 9.5, I feel like, and this is not like, so I thought all the like the actors and all the acting, they were great, worked perfectly for the movie. I like none of the performances like blew me away where I was like, whoa, like that was crazy. But that's not even any of their fault because there's just some movies where there's just not made for one guy to just go like berserk and go crazy like
This is
a
definitely
Joker.
this is definitely a
Wouldn't make
movie
sense.
it's definitely driven more by the story itself
Mm-hmm.
than the
It almost take away from the
characters.
story if somebody was like going out of the way to take over, which is fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess just I had a little bit of questions about inconsistencies in the movie and how that came to be. Like, so the member card, Ron Stallworth gave Adam Driver's character the card.
Yeah.
How did he get that?
What do you mean?
How did he get that card?
He called David Duke. Remember, he said he's like, "Oh, can you like get?" That's how they first started talking because he called the KKK office and said, "Yo, can you fast
Yeah,
track this card?"
but I mean, how did he receive it?
Oh, they mailed it.
I know, but then like they found out that that was his house, and that like there was a black guy living there,
I don't know. Yeah,
and that's why I thought like maybe if the
He
card
has
came
a book.
earlier,
He has a
yeah,
book.
that's what I'm saying. But I think maybe the story did it wrong, where maybe like them getting the card maybe should have came before the guy realized that's where he lived, because it just seemed weird that they wouldn't have connected those together. And then just kind of like the voice, I thought it would have just been a lot more obvious that it wasn't him over the phone. But that's just small things where it's like pretty easily look over and just get by that this isn't a movie, because Adam Driver's voice is just so distinct that like you can't really do anything about it. But yeah, other than that, loved the movie. Thought the humor was really done really well. It's one of those movies where obviously when you finish it, like it hits you hard and you think about it for a while, just because so many things happen in it. And it's also just like, it's really enjoyable. And a lot of characters you want to punch in the face, which like, oh, Felix's wife, I wanted to just, she's the worst. She's the absolute worst. And then when it made me so mad when he was arresting her, and then the cops came up and started like dealing with him. It's just like, if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie. I feel like we haven't even really like gave away too much, but we gave away
No.
nothing, but you can still watch it.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of the logistical issues, like you're talking about the card, I think they can definitely be looked over, because Ron Stallworth, the human being, still somehow got his card and still somehow got into the KKK, right? So whether he mailed it or he got Adam Driver to go and pick it up from somewhere, like that.
It's also like, how did that? And it actually did happen, but like, how did he ever get linked up with guarding David Duke? Like, it just seems like a crazy decision. It's wild, but
it's almost like they just did it out of irony. The whole thing, the whole movie, the whole story of his life is just like total like Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. Like
the real guy, like the guy that like Adam Driver plays, he's gone into like witness protection, so they don't release who he actually is, because he's like, the Klan's still around. So
yeah, definitely.
Which, like, you're doing such a good thing, and then it sucks that you kind of have to go into hiding. But like Ron Stallworth said, he hasn't talked to him in several years. But either way, loved the movie. Yeah, so 9.1 and 9.2, so pretty close. So yeah, that was some fun stuff. And although we said we were going to kind of be doing top performances as we move on to our next segment, we said we'd be doing like top performances on whatever actor was in that movie we just reviewed. The main actor in here is Adam Driver, and I don't think he's really had that much of a selection where we can pick him from that we saw. Like, I'm not reviewing his acting in Star Wars movies. It's just or like, because there's a bunch of them. So
and I also think his acting in Star Wars, like, while it's good, I think it's also very dramatized. Like, I don't know.
So I have a tough time in any of those movies. Anyways, so we're gonna do underappreciated. What I think our most underappreciated movies are. I'm not even saying that these are the most underappreciated movies of all time. These are just like kind of like 5 movies I think are underappreciated.
Yeah. My first one, I got
like number 5, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't even really list these, but
Okay, yeah. Actually, it's kind of the same. Yeah, but like I kind of did, but like either way.
I'm gonna go with 8th Grade, directed by Bo Burnham. Bo Burnham, love Bo Burnham. He's one of my favorite comedians.
I remember watching his like special at your house like time ago, where he's like playing the piano.
Yeah, super innovative guy in comedy, and I think 8th Grade, if you haven't seen it, it's one of the most like authentic depictions of like a preteen in the 21st century. Basically,
it's a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and barely got any recognition from any sort of academy or global scale, but definitely worth the watch.
Cool. I'm going off number 5. I feel like my movies are probably somewhat well known, but I just feel like they're not talked about enough. So my number 5 is Her. I think it doesn't get enough credit just because it's more of a dialogue movies, and you don't get those talked about as much, just because maybe they'll get talked about in kind of like the world of cinema and people that like appreciate cinema. But in terms of like, oh, go watch that movie's awesome. I never really heard of Her until this year, and that I should go watch it. And then I did. And I didn't think I was going to like it because it's pretty much just based on heavy dialogue, but it just works so well. And it kind of gives you a look into like the future of what this possibly could be, and like dating AI, and like it's pretty funny how it works out as well. And just, it's Joaquin, so I pretty much love anything Joaquin does. But I just like really enjoyed the story, and I liked how it hooked me in without really any action or anything like that. It's just dialogue and screenplay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a great movie. My next one is Nightcrawler.
Oh.
So Nightcrawler, I think the reason why I went back and I looked at it, why it's so underappreciated, I think it's basically got a similar character arc as like Joker, in the sense that he goes from a dude who's like completely sane to completely mad. We see those story arcs a lot, but why I think this one is not nearly as appreciated is because of how similar it is. Like, he goes from hating how do I put this? He turns into the person he doesn't want to be. and basically it follows a guy who's just constantly rejected by society. And yeah,
Yeah,
if you haven't
so
watched it, it's really good.
my number 4 is also Nightcrawler, so I was
Oh,
on the boat there. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he's one of the most underappreciated actors in general. I think he's so good at like just playing people that are just like troubled to the core, like just odd. Like I don't know if you ever seen like Donnie Darko, like
yeah.
Jarhead, even like, and then Nightcrawler, like people that there's just like a chip missing and people that are a bit off. And he just his look is just, I don't know. But and it also, what's interesting is that like maybe it's a little more extreme, but like I feel like you could see something like this happening in media, like somebody just fulfilling that role, but like kind of making it a creepy passion of them to go a little too deep and a little too dark, so it feels real, but it's just creepy. And it's just, yeah, you see him kind of his go from like this shy, timid guy to just being like the guy in whatever his field is weird, because there's other people that do it as well. It's a must watch movie. And like, well, it's also when you watch it by yourself. I don't think it's kind of like a group viewing movie, just because you're kind of just on this journey with a guy that's just doing literally anything he can to get news. It's really interesting. It's a really
Yeah,
cool idea as well.
yeah, definitely. The next movie I got is The Big Short. While it's not like, I think The Big Short is appreciated in its storytelling, I guess, in the sense that the story of the housing bubble I don't think has been told very often. But why I think it's underappreciated is because the various ways that they do like creatively explain foreign concepts to the audience. So have you seen it?
Yeah.
So like how they'll just stop in the middle of the movie and be like, if you didn't understand what's going on, here's Selena Gomez with I don't know who
Or
else,
like
but
Margot
two
Robbie in a
random.
bathtub.
Yeah, try and it explains it to you. And it's so good because there's so many movies with historical context that like I think they just expect the audiences to know a lot of the times, and that's definitely not the case for a majority of the time, I would say. Um, and so you have audiences that just kind of have to be like, all right, let's pretend like I know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, that's one of the main reasons why.
Yeah, they make complicated things digestible and entertaining, and like it works. Like sometimes it could come off as cheesy if you don't do it right, but like it fits perfectly. And no, I really like that movie as well. My number 3 is The Fighter. I feel like it's one of my favorite sports movies, and I feel like it's because it's a boxing movie. Maybe it gets like, I don't know, like lost in like all the boxing movies that have come out. I mean, all Creeds, Rockies, Southpaw. There's just a massive amount of boxing movies and kind of like fighting movies that come out. But The Fighter was one of the most just enjoyable movies I've watched from beginning to end. Christian Bale is amazing, and it's just so much more like, I feel like boxing isn't even like that big of a part of it. It's just like this relationship between Mark Wahlberg, who plays Mickey Ward, a boxer that's like trying to become the heavyweight champion of the world, and then his brother Christian Bale, who like all he talks about is the one time he put down Sugar Ray Leonard, and he's like dealing with a crack addiction, and just have you seen it?
No,
And like
maybe.
and like the whole time they're like shooting a HBO documentary on him, and like it's just their relationship is so up and down and it's so real, and it's just like I don't know how to say anything more except you got to watch it because it's so entertaining, and just Christian Bale's performance, it made me love him so much more. He's just so good, and Mark Wahlberg's great as well, but Christian Bale just steals the show.
My next one is going to be Wall-E, and I think it's underappreciated because most Pixar films, a lot of people take them with a grain of salt, or they're just very emotionally driven, like Toy Story or something. They just pull at your heartstrings. But what I think Wall-E does is it's one of the few Pixar films that actually has like a social commentary in terms of like the ecosystem or like um, just overall gluttony and laziness that the world is turning to, right? And I think it's pretty rare for a movie that kind of is directed towards children is able to kind of transcend its audience. Yeah, it's a very good movie.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite Pixar movie, if not my favorite like animated movie. I love Wall-E, and I think it does a good job of like, again, about like how the Big Short makes like kind of like adult things digestible for like a younger audience. The Wall-E does it for an even younger audience, where it's like, it's not even like blatantly just pushing like, oh, we need to like clean up the environment, but it's doing it within a story that totally works. And you have this like kind of nice vulnerable character in Wall-E, and then it's kind of like humorous how they depict what the world has come to, but it's also sad at the same time. So it's like the kids can understand through watching it kind of what's wrong, so it's kind of like implanted in their brain without like it just ruining the movie and being a total like political commentary movie or social commentary movie. So no, I really like that one as well. My number two, that was your number two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My number two is The Master. I feel like people didn't really realize what Joaquin was about until the Joker came out, and I think his performance in The Master is just as good or like better than in Joker. He plays, if you don't, it's like it's pretty much a character study of a World War I vet.
Yeah, I know the movie.
Yeah, I'm just saying it, people that wasn't watched or whatever. Who is like just gets traumatized and kind of gets wrapped up in a cult that's like loosely inspired by Scientology. And like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix is just like an unfair combination. They're just such good actors. Rest in peace to the man. But they work so well off each other, and like just like simple complexities in Joaquin's character that make it so believable. Just like his posture, his like mood swings, even his like facial expression, just everything about him is just like, it's an odd movie, but like it's kind of like art. When you talk about movies that are just kind of like art, it's like Portrait of a Lady, or like you said, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's like there's not, I guess, more in Portrait of a Lady, there's more of like a story that's driving it, but it's not like one thing where you're getting from here to here. It's kind of like, this is what happens, and like you're going on the journey with this character and like see how their lives evolve. And it's really compelling.
Yeah, no, yeah, like you were saying, I think Joaquin, of course, it kind of sucks that people have to backtrack now on how good of an actor he was since Joker came out. I honestly, I realized I just put 4 on my list, but I picked one anyways. Chronicle. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It was in 2012. It's like a found footage film.
An alien thing?
It's like superheroes kind of, but I think it's underappreciated because it was one of the first like mainstream found footage films. There was like Super 8, and then there was like Paranormal Activity.
I was gonna say like Super 8 was another movie I'd put on this list. I loved Super 8. That was a sick movie.
But Chronicle, I think it didn't get as much credit it deserved because it's also one of the more realistic depictions if like something as crazy as getting superpowers were to affect a teenager. And the found footage style I've always gravitated towards. I don't know why. I just think it's some of the coolest style of filmmaking, but unfortunately there's just not many films that do it justice.
Yeah, well, and I think it hasn't really been done that much lately. Like I'm trying to think of movies lately that are found footage. It's kind of like, I feel like early like 2012 and kind of those years when like Super 8 and like Cloverfield came out. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's where more of the found footage movies came out. And we haven't really seen any of them lately. Just switching things up, I guess. But no, I haven't seen that movie. I'll have to give it a check. My number one movie, I guess it's like well known, but I think it's underappreciated because like when it first came out, I think it was really well received. And then over time, I think it kind of like aged sourly, but I don't know why. And it's American Beauty. Kevin Spacey, the one thing about it is that like, it's a little weird watching it now because Kevin Spacey, it's not just about so it's Kevin Spacey plays a dad who's pretty much life is going down the drain. He pretty much just wants to die, and his wife doesn't love him, and he falls in love with his daughter's like best friend, so who's underage. So it's like a little weird thinking about it now, but if you can kind of just like look past that and look at it as a movie, I loved it so much. it's kind of the same thing where it's like there's a lot of darker issues and social commentary, but they kind of do it with like dry humor, but that really works. And I just remember finishing the movie. It's like there wasn't that many ways how I can explain why I liked it. It's just one of those movies where you finish the movie and you're like, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it was just beautifully shot, and just everything about it I loved. And I also have a soft spot in my heart for movies that have narration. I don't know why. I just every time a narrator comes on screen and like or starts talking, I have a feeling it's going to be good.
Solid pick.
Now we get back on track, and we will continue to kind of go year by year doing the Oscar repick. So we're going to be going on to 2019 now, and of course starting off with Best Picture, and Green Book won. I didn't see Green Book, did you?
No.
Yeah, so that would have been helpful in this situation, so I can kind of only go off what I already know. But for me, Best Picture had to be either, like, I would have loved to see A Star Is Born win just because I loved that movie, but I would have liked BlacKkKlansman as well. So for me, it would have been either one of those. I thought Bradley Cooper was amazing in it, and the only problem was it was a kind of a story that's already been told a lot of times, so that takes away from it, which is why I see it doesn't get picked. It's not an original story, which is totally true, but just going off movies that I enjoyed purely, that was one I really did. So that's why I would say probably BlacKkKlansman, because it's an original idea, obviously based off a true story, but I think the true story makes it even cooler. So I'd go with BlacKkKlansman, but I haven't seen Green Book. I've heard it's pretty inaccurate, but I can't really say much about it because I haven't seen it. So I'll go off what I know. So yeah.
Yeah, no arguments there. Probably BlacKkKlansman. It's like it's like we've talked about this whole time. It's just like it has the perfect balance of entertainment and education, where I think Green Book, from what I've heard, is also very slow. So to deliver kind of a similar message, I would say probably BlacKkKlansman.
And like Bohemian Rhapsody, like it was good, but it didn't like change me. It didn't.
No, and I don't think
was,
realistically you can't put
no.
in a musical in. I don't know. I shouldn't say that, but
yeah. Anyways, we'll move on to actor in a leading role, and Rami Malek won. The other options were Christian Bale, Christian Bale in Vice, Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born, Willem Dafoe in At Trinity's a Gate, and Viggo Mortensen in Green Book. So what did you think about Rami Malek winning?
Yeah, I definitely. I can't change anything there. I think to transform into any kind of iconic role like that, it takes so much commitment and so much work and studying. And despite some criticism, I guess some people think that Rami Malek didn't look like him. You can't find someone who looks identical to Freddie Mercury, but I would still hands down give it to Rami Malek.
For me, I'm gonna give it to Bradley Cooper. I just thought his portrayal was a lot more impactful and kind of like, I guess, real. But I guess Freddie Mercury is a little more of like kind of a more flamboyant character, I guess I'd say. But like Bradley Cooper at his lows in the movie, because he plays an alcoholic, it's just like it's so believable. It's somebody where it's like I could see somebody being exactly like that, and I'm sure many rock stars are like that. Where I feel like when I was seeing Rami Malek, I kind of knew he was in a movie portraying a guy that was going through some issues. But Bradley Cooper, you could have told me he was hammered on set, and I would have believed you. Like he had the look, everything about it. He just played that character perfectly. And for him, it wasn't too easy either. I mean, he had to like kind of go through. He had to be a performer himself and get better at singing and stuff like that and playing guitar. And no, I love Bradley Cooper's performance in it. So for me, it would be Bradley Cooper.
My only argument with that is that I would say it's probably a lot harder and a lot more pressure is on you to take on a role like Rami Malek did, and to like execute it the way he did. Like it was, in terms of accuracy to to Freddie Mercury, it's regarded as like one of the best. But
I think just for me, it's just like kind of like I'm going off based how it made me feel, and I think just for me, Bradley Cooper was a little more like I guess real and impactful. But either way, we can move on to actor in a supporting role. This is where it gets a little. I didn't watch a lot. I literally only watched BlacKkKlansman: A Star Is Born, so I didn't watch Green Book, so I'm not sure how well. I don't even. I feel like I could butcher this name, Mahershala Ali. I'm gonna say
Mahershala Ali.
Mahershala Ali. Okay, and so I didn't see the movie, so I'm not exactly sure, but I would give it to Adam Driver because that's the only thing I'm going based off of. And I know Sam Elliott, he was good in it as well, but I think Adam Driver was better. And Adam Driver had a much bigger role in BlacKkKlansman. Like you could almost say he was like a main character as well in that, just because he was one of the driving forces in it. And I really like Adam Driver. Just his comedy's kind of dry as well, but he's pretty funny. And Sam Elliott was good, but he just wasn't as impactful, or I guess as big in the role as Adam Driver was in BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah, Mahershala Ali has definitely like within the past 10 years like stepped up tremendously as one of like the best actors out there right now. And like I said as well, I haven't seen Green Book, so it's hard for me to comment. But from what I've heard, this is kind of the one that really solidified him as one of the best. And there was another movie that he was in.
Moonlight?
Yeah, that's another one that he was really good in. So it's hard to strip it away from him when I haven't seen it, but next best would definitely be Adam Driver.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this is going to be kind of repeating the same things just because I just don't think 2018 was really that great for movies. I know you saw, so actress in a leading role, I'll just go through each thing. The Favorite, Olivia Colman won for it. I didn't see The Favorite. I heard it was really good. But there's also Yalitza Aparicio. Do you know if I'm saying that right? In Roma, Glenn Close in The Wife, Lady Gaga, Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy is Can You Ever Forgive Me? I've also heard good things about Can You Ever Forgive Me with Melissa McCarthy, and I think it's a bit of a different role where it's more of like a crime drama when she's used to more silly comedies like Bridesmaids and all that, Identity Theft and all those, or Identity Thief and all that. But that was different as well. But yeah, I mean, I didn't see Roma. I thought Lady Gaga was amazing in Star Is Born. I didn't see The Favorite. Maybe Olivia Colman deserved to win it, but I would give Lady Gaga just because that's the only movie I've seen from this list. It's the only one I've seen from this list. So
Roma was like, it's hard to give. I think it would be hard to give her the award for actress in a leading role, just because it's such an obscure film.
Yeah.
But my next pick would probably be Melissa McCarthy, just because Lady Gaga, like, it's a singing movie, so obviously, like.
But it's not even like, I feel like singing wasn't even the biggest thing. I was surprised how good of an actor she was.
Yeah, I don't know.
She odd parts in it.
I would say just Melissa McCarthy because just of how drastic of a transition.
Yeah. Okay, we can go to actress in a supporting role. I didn't see any of these movies, so that's going to be tough for me. Did you see any of these movies other than Roma?
I'm trying to remember if I saw all of The Favorite. I definitely saw a bit of it.
And I didn't see Vice. It's on my list to see.
Hard to comment on for sure, though.
We can move on from that one because, anyways, we can go to cinematography. So Roma won. I think that was pretty obvious that was going to be the clear winner, right?
Yeah. It's black and white, which, of course, everyone seems to just marvel over. But no, just the obscureness of the shots and everything were just so different. And there's a lot of shots that are very drawn out, which makes the movie very dry a lot of the times and hard to watch. But no, in comparison to the other ones here, I would say this probably took the biggest risk, and I would say it paid off.
Yeah, because I remember our program director telling us to watch this, but he's like, just watch it for the cinematography because it's quite a boring movie. Mm-hmm. So that kind of rings true, I guess. And then the last one we'll go to is original score. And so I think for this one, it was kind of between, I mean, Mary Poppins Returns is like, it was a whatever movie, but BlacKkKlansman and Black Panther, I think for me had to be the side by sides. But I think BlacKkKlansman, I think it deserved to win. I think Black Panther was kind of just on a roll that year, sweeping everything. So I think that might have added to it. BlacKkKlansman, I just thought some of the songs were just like really powerful. Like you just got into it. Like when they're dancing, I forget what song they were listening to in the club.
It's like It's Too Late to Turn Back Time.
Yeah, whatever. And all the songs were like, yeah, that's a nice song. It's songs I hadn't heard before, and it worked really well. And it's just like, yeah, I think he was very selective with the music he chose, and it worked really well in the scenes they used them.
So is original score just like based on? Is it like the actual songs used in it, or is it like? Because I'm looking at who won, like Ludwig Göransson for Black Panther.
That's true.
So I feel like that is more. It's not original songs. It's
no, I think that's true because there is an original song, but they're not even original songs. So yeah, I guess maybe Black Panther did deserve to win.
Yeah,
I haven't watched Black Panther in a bit. It was it was a bit overrated.
My whole thing with Marvel movies, and I'm sure we'll have we should have an episode just dedicated to Marvel movies because they're so like. I completely agree with Scorsese in the fact that
to a certain degree,
it's not cinema. I don't.
It has to be though, but it's different. It has to be. Think about how much work those go into creating a movie.
I think the first maybe 10 Marvel movies were, and then it just got too formulaic. Like you walk into a Marvel movie and you know exactly what's going to happen, minus maybe like an Easter egg at the end.
Which is true. Which is why I feel like I didn't watch a lot of the movies. But I mean, like. Still cinema. Like that formula works better than a lot of really crappy movies that you'd still call cinema.
It's all in how you
and also like the amount of work that goes into CGI and everything like that. Like I think, and there were movies that kind of spiced it up. Like I loved Thor Ragnarok for what it was. I loved Endgame. I think also I think there's a challenge in bringing all these stories together and like fitting them in and making them work as well. Because I think Endgame was much different than I thought it was going to be, and they went off the path of the formula where they kind of went back in time and made it like, oh, there's that, and it made it a lot more interesting.
But so then at that point, you have to figure out who you're giving more credit to, because are you giving credit to the people who made the stories? Because every Marvel movie, there's already been a comic book written for.
And if you
like Infinity War, obviously you can give credit to the fact that all those stories put together is tremendously difficult to do, but adapting it to the screen is a lot easier than coming up with the whole idea. Okay, yeah, I can understand that. That's also formulaic, but I would say Harry Potter's less formulaic than
definitely. I would say that, but I mean, I guess to a certain degree, but and I can see that, but I still think if you're getting people coming out to the movies and enjoying them and creating some sort of a story and mixing, there has to be a degree. But I mean, I don't know how you can say it's not cinema, because it clearly is. I mean, it's maybe not original cinema, but
yeah,
Scorsese,
okay, maybe
I think has an extreme high standard of what things are.
I would say no. I'm not going to deny Scorsese's identification of what cinema is might be drastic, but to kind of basically it's all in how you perceive appreciation of film, not appreciation, but what you believe determines what a good film is. Because obviously being able to make a Spider-Man movie and put kids in the seats is a lot easier than making BlacKkKlansman and putting people in the seats, right?
And I agree with that, and that's why I don't think any Marvel movie should ever, unless it's for visual effects, I don't think it should ever be nominated for Oscars, because you definitely have to think about it in a different light, because like you said, they kind of are following a formula, and I think it's a lot more, I guess, less up to creative. There's not a lot less creative decisions within no, there's not really many people probably like improving and doing their
Yeah.
own thing and like building their own character because there already kind of is this set role for the character, which is why I think you think of you it's fair to think about it in the same light. But I mean, so much work goes into these movies, and it's not like every single one is the same thing. But yeah, definitely there are a lot of similarities in them,
Right.
and definitely to a certain point, like yeah, there's a lot of money in these movies, but they have to be cinema.
Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point it's an agree to disagree type of thing because okay, like also you have to figure out what you define cinema. Like yes, are the Marvel movies movies? Yes, they are movies, but like
Mm-hmm.
what I would classify like at this point they could have stopped making Marvel movies like 10 of them ago. But what they're doing is they're milking the formula because it works. And you can't blame them for that because it's been Disney's biggest moneymaker. And all I'm saying is it's a lot easier to go into a comic book store, find a comic book, and make a movie out of that than, right? Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
but then I feel like there's a lot of movies that kind of go like 3, 4, and 5, and like to start stretching it, like the Transformers movies and all of that. Like they kind of start feeding the same formula, like
I don't think that's
um,
cinema either.
or like a Terminator movies, or what other movies? I guess
I would give Terminator more credit, though, because
Toy Story, like it's kind of follows a somewhat similar story. Like still the same characters, and they don't like. Do they really grow? I mean, you're talking about kid animation movies as well, but I mean, like, I don't know. And I definitely see what you're saying. Like, you can't think about Marvel movies in the same point. Like, I would never say I loved Endgame and thoroughly enjoyed it, but it won't even touch my like top 20 favorite movies of all time. It might be one of my most entertaining movies, but it depends, like, if you're or like most enjoyable watches. But it's like,
and
yeah,
it's like the whole thing that they did with the Easter eggs is like that. It's so smart, but at the same time, you just kind of feel cheated because you have to know what happens next, right? Like you have to go and see Endgame if you've seen all 21 other Marvel movies, right?
yeah, it's smart.
Yeah.
They create an empire.
And I think if you took away a lot of the special effects, which obviously that is probably the biggest staple of the entire thing.
Definitely.
No one can ever take that away from them. But like that I think should be the major thing that is appreciated about them is how forward thinking they were in terms of CGI and stuff like that. But
I can't even start to begin to think how they do the CGI. Like, there's just so many different. Oh, like it must just take so much work.
yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. But I just in terms of storytelling, I don't know if you can give as much credit as something else.
Yeah, I think it definitely loses credit, but I don't know if it makes people coming out to theaters, it must be doing something. But yeah, I think we talked pretty long time about all that. But yeah, so the next movie we're going to be doing, switching it up a little bit. It's what year was this movie we're talking about?
I think it's actually still technically in the order, so I
Yeah,
think it's
it might still be
2017.
in our. We were gonna mix it up, but yeah, we wanted. So pretty much we're gonna be watching Midsummer because it's just a movie both of us have wanted to watch, and we'll probably do Hereditary after because I think I think they work together somehow. I'll have to look that up and
Really?
see what it is. I think somehow. Let me clear this file up right now. I remember I was told that. I think that may be rumors as well, kind of conspiracies like these ones match up, but let me just quickly see if Midsummer has any connection.
Regardless, though, like finally we're actually going to do a review of a movie that neither of us. Well, yeah, I saw BlacKkKlansman, you didn't, but this one we're going to go in completely blind. And um, first first watch is obviously a lot different than second or third watch.
Okay, so here, I looked something up for is Hereditary and Midsummer connected. So it says the short answer is it's complicated. Unfortunately for fans hoping for Hereditary sequel, the two films are not directly connected.
Mm.
But Astor did recently tell Fandango, which I guess is whatever this news site is, that Midsummer and Hereditary do share some DNA. So I mean, that's just so loosely connected that I guess maybe in his mind he kind of felt like they could have been in the same like realm of, or maybe in the same like time frame or same universe, but I think you can pretty much say these are two different movies. We'll go with that. So we'll do Midsommar first, and then I say we'll probably try out Hereditary one time down the road. I don't want to watch too many scary movies by myself during quarantine, so we'll keep them to a limited. But yeah, Midsommar is going to be our next movie, so that should be out a couple days. So get ready for that and make sure you watch it. Yeah, I don't think it's really streaming anywhere, but you can get it like free online. You can find it.
Yeah, we're not eligible to be handing out links illegally, but
Yeah.
123movies.com.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all. Tune in next time. See ya.
See ya.